Your translator is lying to you. Those 5 words, whispered by a terrified waitress to a billionaire she'd never met, stopped a $30 million fraud dead in its tracks. But Claire Bennett wasn't supposed to speak. She was supposed to stay invisible, keep her head down, and survive another shift carrying wine to people who never looked at her twice. Tonight, that silence almost cost a man everything. And breaking it, that would cost her even more. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far Claire's story travels. The rain hit Sydney like it had a grudge. Not the gentle kind that tapped politely on windows. This was the violent, angry sort that turned streets into rivers and made taxi drivers curse as they white-knuckled their steering wheels through flooded intersections. The kind of storm that made people run for cover and wonder what they'd done to piss off the weather gods. Inside Le Bernardin, though, you'd never know the world outside was drowning. The restaurant sat on the 42nd floor of the Ashford Tower, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and the kind of quiet money that didn't need to announce itself. The type of place where a single bottle of wine cost more than most people's rent, where conversations happened in hushed tones over seared scallops and black truffle risotto, where deals worth more than small countries got made between the appetizer and the main course. Claire Bennett moved through it all like a ghost. At 30 years old, she'd perfected the art of being invisible. Keep your eyes down. Smile when spoken to. Don't speak unless absolutely necessary. Carry the tray steady, pour the wine smooth, and for God's sake, don't drop anything or you'll be paying it off for the next 6 months. Table 12 needs a refill on the Chateau Margaux, Marcus, the head waiter, snapped as he breezed past her. And try not to look so terrified this time. You're serving wine, not delivering bad news. If only you knew, Claire thought, but she just nodded and reached for the bottle. Her hand shook slightly as she lifted it. They always did these days. Part anxiety, part exhaustion, part the constant low-grade terror that had become her baseline since her entire life had imploded 3 years ago. 3 years since she'd walked into her office at Bennett and Associates Translation Services to find the locks changed and 2 federal agents waiting to ask her some questions about financial irregularities she knew nothing about. 3 years since her business partner, her best friend since university, the person she'd trusted with everything, had vanished with $2 million and left her holding the bag. 3 years since her name went from brilliant young translator to that woman involved in the fraud scandal in every industry circle that mattered. But that was ancient history now. Water under a bridge she'd burned herself trying to cross. These days, Claire Bennett didn't translate high-stakes international negotiations. She poured wine and carried plates and tried very hard not to think about the languages she used to speak fluently, the boardrooms she used to navigate with confidence, the person she used to be before everything fell apart. Table 12, Marcus reminded her sharply, and Claire snapped back to the present. Right. Wine. Table 12, the private dining room in the back where some big shot was having a business dinner. She straightened her black uniform, tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, and headed toward the back of the restaurant with the wine bottle cradled carefully in her arms like it might explode. The private dining room was separated from the main floor by frosted glass doors that did absolutely nothing to muffle sound but gave the illusion of privacy. Rich people loved illusions. Claire knocked softly before entering. "Come in," a voice called. American accent, smooth and controlled. She pushed through the door and immediately wished she hadn't. The room was smaller than she'd expected, dominated by a single round table where 3 men sat. 2 wore expensive suits that probably cost more than Claire made in 6 months. The third wore a slightly rumpled blazer and had the harried look of someone trying very hard to appear more important than he felt. The American in the navy suit looked up as she entered, Ethan Calloway. She recognized him from the reservation list, though she'd never seen him in person before. CEO of Calloway Industries, some kind of tech and infrastructure empire, recently widowed according to the gossip magazines that sometimes got left in the break room. He was younger than she'd expected, early 30s maybe. Sharp jaw, dark hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it, eyes that looked tired around the edges. The kind of handsome that came from good genes and better skincare, but there was something worn about him, something that suggested the facade cost him more than it should. "Ah, perfect timing," the rumpled blazer said. The translator, she realized. American accent trying very hard to sound sophisticated and failing. We were just about to toast to a successful partnership. The third man was older, maybe late 50s, with steel gray hair and the kind of rigid posture that screamed military background. German, Claire's brain supplied automatically, picking up on the subtle tells in how he held himself, how his suit sat on his shoulders. She moved quietly around the table, refilling glasses with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd learned to be invisible. Don't make eye contact. Don't insert yourself into their conversation. Just pour the wine and leave. So we're agreed then, the translator was saying in English, his tone jovial. Your company handles the European distribution network. Mr. Calloway handles the Asia-Pacific expansion, and everyone makes a fortune. Mr. Mueller, would you like me to translate the final terms one more time before you sign? The German businessman nodded, and the translator launched into what was presumably a German translation of what he'd just said. Except it wasn't. Claire's hand froze mid-pour. She understood German, fluently. It had been one of her specialties back when she had a career instead of a uniform and an overwhelming sense of failure. She'd spent 2 years living in Berlin, had translated for the Australian embassy, had once simultaneously interpreted for a UN conference on international trade policy. And what the translator just said? That wasn't even close to what he'd claimed. Her heart started hammering against her ribs. Keep pouring, she told herself. This is none of your business. Just finish the table and leave. But she couldn't make her ears stop working. I told him the distribution rights are exclusive to his company for 5 years, the translator said smoothly in English, turning back to Ethan. He's very pleased with those terms. Then he switched to German again, and Claire's stomach dropped, because what he actually told the German investor was that the distribution rights were non-exclusive for 2 years, with significant penalty clauses if performance targets weren't met, terms that would effectively gut the entire agreement and shift all the risk onto Mueller's company, while Calloway Industries walked away with minimal exposure. Wonderful, Ethan said, clearly trusting his translator completely. Then I think we're ready to finalize everything. The translator smiled, Mueller smiled, Ethan smiled, and Claire stood there with a wine bottle in her shaking hands, watching a man about to sign a contract he didn't understand, being lied to by someone he trusted, walking straight into a trap that would cost him millions. Not your problem, she told herself firmly. You need this job. Your mother's treatment costs money you don't have. You cannot afford to get involved in other people's business disasters. You tried that once, and it destroyed your entire life. She finished pouring the last glass and moved toward the door. Just one more small detail, the translator was saying, about the quarterly reporting structure. More German, more lies. This time he was telling Mueller that the reporting requirements were minimal, quarterly summaries only. But what he told Ethan in English was that Mueller had agreed to weekly detailed reports with full financial disclosure. The numbers didn't even match up. Neither man would get what they thought they were agreeing to. The whole contract was a house of cards built on deliberate mistranslation. Claire's hand touched the door handle. Keep walking. If you could just initial here, Mr. Mueller, the translator said, sliding papers across the table. And Mr. Calloway, your signature here? She heard the scratch of pen on paper. And suddenly, she was 14 years old again, standing in her father's study in Jakarta, watching him prepare for a diplomatic negotiation. Her father, the real diplomat, the one who'd taught her that languages weren't just about words, they were about trust, about building bridges between people who didn't understand each other. Claire Bear, he'd said, catching her eavesdropping from the doorway. You know what the most dangerous thing in the world is? She'd shaken her head. A translator who lies. Because when they change the words, they change everything. They can start wars, destroy treaties, ruin lives, and the people who trusted them never even know what hit them. He died 6 months later. Heart attack in a hotel room in Singapore, alone except for the briefcase full of documents he'd been translating until 3 a.m. Her mother always said he'd worked himself to death. Claire thought maybe he'd just cared too much about getting the words right. The door handle was cool under her palm. She could walk out, go back to the kitchen, finish her shift, collect her paycheck, pay for her mother's medication, keep her head down and survive another day in the ruins of her former life. Or, Claire turned around. 3 men looked up at her, surprised that the invisible waitress was still in the room. Her heart was trying to crawl out of her throat. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to set the wine bottle down on the sideboard before she dropped it. Every survival instinct she'd developed over the past 3 years was screaming at her to shut up and leave. She walked toward the table instead. "Sir," she said quietly, looking at Ethan Calloway. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended, barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but—" The translator's eyes narrowed. "We're in the middle of something important here. Could you—" "Your translator is lying to you," Claire said. The room went absolutely silent. Ethan's pen stopped moving mid-signature. Mueller looked confused. The translator's face drained of color and then flushed an angry red. "Excuse me?" the translator sputtered. "This is completely inappropriate. You need to leave, right?" "What did you say?" Ethan's voice cut through the room like a blade. He wasn't looking at the translator anymore. He was looking directly at Claire, and his eyes were suddenly very, very sharp. Claire's whole body was trembling now. This was insane. She was going to lose her job. Marcus would fire her on the spot. She'd never get another position in any decent restaurant in Sydney. She'd have to explain to her mother why she couldn't afford next month's treatment. But she'd already jumped off the cliff. Might as well fall with purpose. "He's been mistranslating," she said, louder this time. "The entire conversation. What he's telling you in English isn't what he's telling Mr. Mueller in German. The terms don't match. Neither of you is agreeing to what you think you're agreeing to." "That's absurd," the translator said, but his voice had gone thin and reedy. "I've been in this business for 15 years. This waitress doesn't know what she's talking about. She probably heard a few words and got confused." "Quiet," Ethan said, still looking at Claire. "You speak German," he stated. Not a question. Claire nodded. "Fluently. Also French, Spanish, Italian, Mandarin, Japanese, and Portuguese." The words came out automatically. The same introduction she used to give in every client meeting back when she had clients. Back when she was someone. Ethan's eyebrows went up slightly. Then he turned to Mueller and said something in what Claire recognized as extremely broken textbook German, something about verifying the contract terms. Mueller responded rapidly, also looking confused now. "I didn't catch all of that," Ethan admitted, turning back to Claire. "What did he say?" The translator opened his mouth, but Ethan held up a hand. "I wasn't asking you." Claire swallowed hard. "He said he's concerned about the 2-year exclusivity limit and wants to know if you're really comfortable with the weekly reporting requirements, because that seems excessive for a partnership of this scale." Ethan's jaw tightened. "The contract I was about to sign has a 5-year exclusivity period and quarterly reports only." "I know," Claire said quietly. "That's what your translator told you, but it's not what he told Mr. Mueller." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Ethan stood up slowly, and something in his expression made Claire take an involuntary step backward. This wasn't rage. Rage would have been simpler. This was something colder and infinitely more dangerous. "Walk me through it," he said. "Every discrepancy, every lie, in front of everyone." The translator shot to his feet. "This is ridiculous. You're going to believe some random waitress over a certified professional translator? I have credentials, references. I've worked with your company before." "Which is why I trusted you," Ethan said, still not looking at him, which was apparently a mistake. "Sit down." It wasn't a request. The translator sat. For the next 20 minutes, Claire went through the entire conversation, piece by piece. What the translator had claimed he said in English, what he'd actually said in German, the discrepancies and exclusivity periods, reporting requirements, penalty clauses, profit-sharing ratios, territorial restrictions. It got worse with every sentence. This wasn't just simple mistranslation or innocent error. This was deliberate, systematic fraud designed to create a contract that would benefit neither party while probably funneling money somewhere in the middle, most likely into the translator's pocket or someone else's who'd set this whole thing up. Mueller's face went from confused to shocked to absolutely furious as Claire laid it all out. He started speaking rapid German, and Claire translated automatically. "He's saying he never would have agreed to these terms," she said. "He thinks you're trying to cheat him. He's threatening to walk away from the entire deal and report this to—" "Tell him I had no idea," Ethan interrupted. "Tell him I was being lied to just as badly as he was. Tell him I'm going to handle this, and I'd like to reschedule this meeting with a translator we both trust." Claire translated. Mueller's expression softened slightly, though he still looked like he wanted to punch someone. He responded in German, and Claire translated back. He says he appreciates your honesty, but he's going to need time to reconsider whether he wants to do business with a company that employs people like him. She gestured toward the translator, who was now sweating visibly. Ethan nodded slowly. Then he turned to the translator with an expression that could have frozen fire. "You have 30 seconds to get out of this restaurant before I call security," he said quietly. "And if I ever see your face again, in any professional capacity whatsoever, I will personally ensure that every company in this city knows exactly what you tried to do here tonight. Am I clear?" The translator started to protest, then seemed to realize there was absolutely no way out of this. He grabbed his briefcase and practically ran from the room. The door slammed behind him. Muller said something else in German, asking who Claire was and where Ethan had found such a competent translator. Ethan turned to her with a strange expression. "He wants to know who you are." Claire's brief moment of courage evaporated like water on hot pavement. The adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation was draining away, leaving behind the familiar anxiety and fear. "Nobody," she said automatically. "I'm nobody. I'm just a waitress. I should go. I'm sorry for interrupting your dinner." She turned toward the door, desperate to escape before the full reality of what she'd just done crashed down on her. "Wait," Ethan said. She froze. "What's your name?" "Claire," she whispered. "Claire Bennett." "Claire Bennett," he repeated, like he was filing it away somewhere. "Thank you. You just saved me from making a $30 million mistake." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and reached for the door handle again. "If you need anything," Ethan continued, "a reference, help finding a better position, anything at all." "I'm fine," Claire lied. "Thank you. I'm fine." She pulled the door open and practically fled into the hallway. Marcus was waiting for her just outside, arms crossed, expression thunderous. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "You don't interrupt private meetings. You don't insert yourself into clients' business. You pour the wine and leave. That's the job." "I know," Claire said. "I'm sorry. Mr. Calloway is one of our most important clients. If he complains—" "He won't," a voice said from behind them. They both turned. Ethan had followed her out of the private dining room. "Ms. Bennett was helping me with a translation issue," he said smoothly. "I specifically asked for her assistance. She was professional and competent. If anyone should be concerned about complaints, it's me. And I assure you, I have none." Marcus's expression shifted from angry to confused to obsequious in under 3 seconds. "Of course, Mr. Calloway. I apologize if there was any confusion. Claire is one of our best servers." Liar, Claire thought, but she kept her mouth shut. "Good," Ethan said. "Then I'm sure you won't mind if I request her specifically for the remainder of my dinner. Mr. Mueller and I have some things to discuss, and having someone who actually speaks German might be helpful." It wasn't a request. Marcus nodded so hard Claire was surprised his head didn't fall off. "Of course. Claire, you're assigned to the private dining room for the rest of the evening." Then he scurried away, probably to go panic about whether he'd almost fired someone a billionaire had personally requested. Ethan waited until he was gone before turning back to Claire. "You looked like you were about to bolt," he said. "I figured giving you a reason to stick around might help." "Why?" The question came out before Claire could stop it. "Because I have questions," Ethan said simply. "And because you just did something most people wouldn't have the guts to do. I'd like to understand why." Claire wanted to tell him it was nothing, that she'd just been doing the right thing, that he shouldn't read too much into it, but she was so tired of lying. "My father used to say that a translator who lies is the most dangerous thing in the world," she heard herself say, "because they can start wars and destroy lives and nobody even knows what hit them. I couldn't just walk away and let that happen." Something shifted in Ethan's expression. "Your father was a translator?" "Diplomat, Australian embassy. He died when I was 15. Why was she telling him this? She never talked about her father, not even to people she actually knew. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, and he sounded like he meant it. Claire shrugged uncomfortably. "It was a long time ago." "Doesn't make it easier." "No, it really didn't." "I should get back to the dining room," she said, because standing in this hallway having a conversation with a billionaire about her dead father was somehow more terrifying than confronting the translator had been. Right, Ethan said. Of course. After you. They walked back into the private dining room together. Mueller was still there, looking uncertain and slightly suspicious. For the next hour, Claire translated the actual conversation between them. No manipulation, no hidden terms, just honest communication between two businessmen trying to figure out if they could still trust each other enough to make a deal. It was exhausting. Her German was rusty from disuse, and she had to pause several times to find the right words. But she got through it. By the end, Mueller had agreed to reschedule the contract signing for next week with a new translator, someone they'd both vet this time. They shook hands carefully, and Mueller left with a promise to be in touch. Then it was just Claire and Ethan in the private dining room, and she suddenly had no idea what to do with her hands. "You're out of practice," Ethan observed. Claire flushed. "I haven't used German professionally in 3 years. I'm sorry if I wasn't—" "You were excellent," he interrupted. "Better than excellent, considering you were improvising. I'm just wondering why someone with your skills is working as a waitress." And there it was. The question she'd been dreading. "It's complicated," she said, staring at the table. "I have time." "You really don't want to know." "I really do." Claire looked up at him, this stranger who'd somehow managed to pull more honesty out of her in 2 hours than most people managed in years, and made a decision that probably qualified as temporary insanity. "Fine," she said, "but you're going to wish you hadn't asked." She told him everything. The translation business she'd built from nothing after her father died. The best friend who'd been her partner for 5 years. The morning she'd discovered $2 million missing and her name attached to fraudulent contracts she'd never seen. The federal investigation. The frozen accounts. The legal fees that had consumed her savings. The colleagues who'd stopped returning her calls. The industry that had blacklisted her based on accusations she couldn't fight because her partner had vanished without a trace. The slow, grinding collapse of everything she'd built. "They never pressed charges," she said. "There wasn't enough evidence that I was actually involved, but there wasn't enough evidence that I wasn't either, so I'm just stuck. Can't prove I'm innocent, can't move on, can't get hired anywhere that would check my references. So I pour wine and try not to think about the fact that I used to be good at something that mattered." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "What was your partner's name?" he asked finally. "Why?" "Because I'm curious if he's still operating under the same identity, or if he's smart enough to have changed it." Claire blinked. "You believe me? Should I not?" "Most people don't. Most people assume where there's smoke, there's fire, that I must have been involved somehow even if they couldn't prove it." "Most people are idiots," Ethan said bluntly. "I've been lied to by enough people to recognize the difference between a liar and someone telling an uncomfortable truth. You're not a liar, Claire Bennett." Something cracked in her chest. She didn't realize how badly she'd needed someone to say that until she heard it. "His name was Marcus Roth," she said quietly. "And good luck finding him. I spent a year trying." Ethan pulled out his phone and made a note. "I know people who are very good at finding people who don't want to be found." "Why would you do that?" He looked at her like the answer should be obvious. "Because you saved me from a disaster tonight, and I pay my debts. And because someone who speaks 7 languages and has the courage to call out fraud to a stranger's face shouldn't be wasting her life carrying wine bottles." "I'm not wasting my life," Claire said defensively. "I'm surviving. There's a difference." "Is there?" The question hung in the air between them like smoke. Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and felt her stomach drop. 3 missed calls from the hospital, 1 text message. "Please call regarding your mother's care plan." The real world came crashing back in with the force of a freight train. "I have to go," she said abruptly. "I'm sorry. Thank you for everything, but I need to—" "Go," Ethan said immediately. "Is everything all right?" "I don't know. My mother's in the hospital. I should have been checking my phone." She was already moving toward the door when he called after her. "Claire." She stopped, turned. "This isn't finished," he said. "The conversation, the questions, the fact that you're wasted here. I'll be in touch." She didn't have time to argue, so she just nodded and ran. The hospital was 30 minutes away by taxi and good traffic. Tonight, with the storm still raging, it took almost an hour. Claire spent the entire ride staring at her phone, waiting for another call that would tell her whether she needed to prepare for the worst. Her mother had been sick for 18 months. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The kind that came with pamphlets about managing expectations and doctors who spoke in careful euphemisms about quality of life instead of survival rates. The experimental treatment they'd started 3 months ago was the last option, and it cost more money than Claire could even conceptualize, even with insurance that barely covered a fraction. Hence the waitressing, hence the crushing poverty, hence the complete inability to fix her ruined reputation because every spare dollar went to keeping her mother alive for one more month. When she finally burst through the hospital doors, soaking wet and breathing hard, a nurse directed her to her mother's room on the 4th floor. Isabel Bennett was awake, which was good. She looked exhausted, which was normal, but she was smiling, which was unexpected. "There you are," her mother said. "I was wondering how long it would take them to track you down." "What's wrong? What happened? Is the treatment not working? Did something—" "Nothing's wrong, sweetheart. Sit down before you hyperventilate." Claire sat. "Then why did they call me?" "Because I told them to. I wanted to discuss something with you, and you've been avoiding having this conversation for 2 months. Oh no. Mom, the treatment isn't working," Isabel said bluntly. "We both know it. I'm not getting better. I'm getting weaker. And you're spending money you don't have to buy me a few extra months that aren't particularly pleasant for anyone involved." "Stop," Claire said. "We're not having this conversation." "Yes, we are. Because I'm the one dying, which means I get to make the decisions about how I spend whatever time I have left. And I've decided I want you to stop the treatment." The words hit like a physical blow. "No," Claire said. "Absolutely not. There's still a chance." "There's no chance, baby. We both know that. The doctors know it too, even if they're too polite to say it outright." Isabel reached out and took her daughter's hand. "I'm tired, Claire, and I'm ready. But I can't go knowing that you're destroying yourself trying to save someone who can't be saved." Tears were streaming down Claire's face now, hot and angry. "I can't just give up on you." "You're not giving up on me. You're letting me go with some dignity instead of dragging this out until neither of us can remember who we used to be." "I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do." Isabel's grip tightened on her hand. "You're my daughter. You're John Bennett's daughter. You're strong enough to survive anything, even this." "I don't feel strong," Claire whispered. "Nobody does, darling. That's the secret. We're all just pretending until the pretending becomes real." They sat in silence for a while, holding hands while the storm battered the windows and the hospital machinery beeped steadily in the background. "Your father would have been proud of you," Isabel said eventually. "For what you built. For how you survived when it all fell apart. For starting over even when it was terrifying." "I didn't start over. I gave up. Is that what you call it? Because from where I'm sitting, you've been working yourself to exhaustion trying to keep us both afloat. That's not giving up, sweetheart. That's fighting with everything you have. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does. But you're going to be all right, Claire. Better than all right. Something tells me things are about to change for you." Claire thought about the confrontation in the restaurant, about Ethan Calloway and his offer to help, about the way he'd looked at her like she was someone who mattered instead of just a waitress who'd gotten lucky. "Maybe," she said. "Definitely," her mother corrected. "You just have to be brave enough to let them." Her phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. "Ms. Bennett?" An unfamiliar male voice. Professional, crisp. "My name is David Chen. I'm the chief legal counsel for Callaway Industries. Mr. Callaway asked me to reach out to you regarding some information that's come to light about your former business partner." Claire's heart started pounding. "What information?" "I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Would you be available to meet tomorrow morning at our headquarters, 9 o'clock? She looked at her mother, who was watching her with knowing eyes. "Yes," Claire heard herself say. "I'll be there." "Excellent. I'll send you the address." "And Ms. Bennett?" "Yes?" "Mr. Calloway also asked me to tell you that he's very interested in discussing a potential employment opportunity with you, something in your actual field of expertise, if you're interested." The room felt like it was spinning. Yes, I'm interested." "Perfect. We'll see you tomorrow morning." He hung up. Claire stared at her phone like it might explode. "See?" her mother said softly. "Things are changing already." "This is insane," Claire said. "I met him 3 hours ago. I saved him from one bad contract. That's not enough reason to—" Maybe it is. Maybe he sees something in you that you've forgotten how to see in yourself. Isabel smiled. Your father always said the right words at the right time could change everything. Maybe tonight you said the right words. Maybe. Or maybe this was all going to blow up in her face like everything else in her life had. But standing there in that hospital room with her mother's hand in hers and a phone call that might mean everything or nothing, Claire made a decision. She was going to show up tomorrow morning. She was going to walk into Callaway Industries headquarters. She was going to face whatever this was head on instead of running away. Because her mother was right about one thing. She was John Bennett's daughter, and she was done being invisible. Claire didn't sleep. She lay in her cramped studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, listening to her upstairs neighbor's television blare some late-night infomercial, and tried to convince herself that showing up at Callaway Industries tomorrow wasn't the stupidest decision she'd ever made. The list of stupid decisions was pretty long, though. Trusting Marcus Roth, not checking the company accounts more carefully, believing that hard work and talent were enough to protect her from betrayal. So maybe one more wouldn't kill her. Probably. At 5:30, she gave up on sleep entirely and took a shower that alternated between scalding hot and ice cold because the building's water heater had exactly two settings, volcanic and Arctic. She stood under the spray trying to remember the last time she'd walked into a corporate office as something other than a delivery person or a janitor. 3 years. 3 years since she'd worn anything other than a waitress uniform or clearance rack jeans. 3 years since she'd had to think about making an impression that didn't involve memorizing wine pairings. Her closet was a graveyard of her former life. She pushed past the black work pants and white button-downs until she found it. The gray blazer she'd worn to client meetings back when she had clients. It smelled like mothballs and broken dreams, but it still fit. Barely. She'd lost weight since then. The kind of weight you lose when you're too stressed to eat properly and too poor to eat well. She paired it with the only decent blouse she still owned and the black pants that didn't have a wine stain on them. Professional enough to not look homeless, plain enough to not look like she was trying too hard. In the bathroom mirror, she looked like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. You can do this, she told her reflection. Her reflection looked skeptical. By 7:30, she was on the train heading into the city, clutching her phone with the address that David Chen had sent her. The morning commute was packed with people in expensive suits, carrying expensive coffee, all of them looking tired and important and like they belonged in the world Claire used to inhabit. She felt like an imposter, like any second someone would point at her and shout that she didn't belong here, that she should go back to carrying wine bottles and keeping her mouth shut. Callaway Industries was headquartered in one of those gleaming glass towers that made you feel insignificant just by existing near it. 63 floors of steel and ambition, with a lobby that looked like it cost more than Claire would make in 10 lifetimes. Security stopped her at the desk. Name and purpose of visit, the guard said without looking up. Claire Bennett, I have a meeting with David Chen at 9. The guard typed something into his computer, frowned, typed some more. Claire's stomach clenched. This was it. They'd realized they'd made a mistake. There was no meeting. Ethan Callaway had sobered up from whatever temporary insanity had possessed him last night and rescinded the invitation. 57th floor, the guard said finally, handing her a visitor badge. Elevators are to your left. Mr. Chen's assistant will meet you when you arrive. Claire took the badge with shaking hands and headed for the elevators before he could change his mind. The ride-up was smooth and silent and utterly terrifying. She watched the floor numbers climb and tried to remember how to breathe normally. By the time the doors opened on the 57th floor, her heart was doing gymnastics in her chest. A woman in a crisp navy dress was waiting for her. Mid-40s, perfect posture, the kind of efficient warmth that came from years of managing other people's chaos. Ms. Bennett, I'm Jennifer Park, Mr. Chen's assistant. He's just finishing up a call, but he'll be with you shortly. Can I get you some coffee? Water? Water would be great, Claire managed. Her throat was so dry she could barely speak. Jennifer led her through an open office space where people worked at sleek desks with multiple monitors, everyone looking focused and competent and like they knew exactly what they were doing with their lives. They passed conference rooms with glass walls, breakout spaces with expensive-looking furniture, and artwork that probably cost more than Claire's annual rent. This was a different universe, one she'd glimpsed before, back when she'd been building her own company, but she'd never quite made it to this level. This was Fortune 500 territory. This was where the real money lived. Jennifer showed her to a small conference room with a view that overlooked half of Sydney. "Make yourself comfortable. Mr. Chen will be right in." Then she was gone, and Claire was alone with the view and her anxiety. She checked her phone. 8:53, 7 minutes early. Was that good? Did she look too eager? Should she have arrived exactly on time? "Stop it," she muttered to herself. "You're a 30-year-old woman, not a teenager at her first job interview." Except it felt exactly like that. The door opened at 8:59. David Chen was younger than she'd expected from his voice, maybe late 30s, with sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, and the kind of composed energy that suggested he didn't waste time on anything that didn't matter. "Ms. Bennett, thank you for coming." He shook her hand with exactly the right amount of pressure. Professional, confident. "I appreciate you making time on short notice." "Of course," Claire said, trying to match his tone. "Your message sounded important." "It is." He set down a leather portfolio and took the seat across from her. "Mr. Calloway briefed me on the situation with the translator last night, and I took the liberty of doing some digging into your background. I hope you don't mind." Claire's stomach dropped. "What kind of digging?" "The legal kind. I pulled the federal investigation records from your case 3 years ago, reviewed the evidence, talked to a few people who were involved in the investigation." He paused. "I also found Marcus Roth." The room tilted. "What?" "He's been operating under the name Michael Ross for the past 2 years, currently living in Singapore, running a consulting business that specializes in, and you're going to love this, international contract negotiation and translation services." Claire couldn't breathe. She'd spent a year searching for Marcus, hired a private investigator she couldn't afford who'd come up empty, filed reports with every relevant authority who'd basically told her there was nothing they could do without more evidence. And this man had found him in less than 12 hours. "How?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "I'm very good at my job," David said simply, "and I have access to resources most people don't." He slid a folder across the table. "This is everything we found. Bank records showing transfers from the account he cleaned out, property records under his new name, business registration, even some photos from his company's website." Claire opened the folder with trembling hands. There he was, older, different haircut, but unmistakably Marcus Roth smiling at the camera in a professional headshot, looking successful and respectable, and like he hadn't destroyed someone's entire life for $2 million. "I'm going to be sick," she said. "Understandable." David pushed a water glass toward her. "Take your time." She drank half the glass in one go, trying to process what she was seeing. "Why? Why did you do this?" "Because Mr. Calloway asked me to. And because when I reviewed your case, it became very clear that you got spectacularly screwed by a justice system that couldn't be bothered to actually investigate properly." "So what happens now?" Claire asked. Can we do anything with this?" "That depends on what you want. We can report him to the authorities in Singapore. We can file a civil suit. We can do nothing at all and just sit on this information. It's your call." It should have been an easy decision. Marcus had ruined her. He deserved to be exposed, prosecuted, punished for what he'd done. But Claire had learned the hard way that justice was expensive and uncertain and exhausting. "What do you think I should do?" she asked. David leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Honestly, I think you should let us handle it. I have colleagues in Singapore who can ensure the right people see this information. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. In the meantime, I think you should focus on moving forward instead of looking backward." "Moving forward how?" "By accepting the job Mr. Calloway wants to offer you." There it was, the other shoe dropping. "I don't understand," Claire said carefully. "He doesn't know me. I helped him one time. That's not a reason to "He needs a new head of translation services," David interrupted. "The translator from last night? Turns out he wasn't the only problem. We've been having issues with our international contracts for months. Misunderstandings, delays, terms that don't quite match up between parties. Nothing as blatant as last night, but enough to cause problems." "And you think I can fix that?" "Mr. Calloway thinks you can. After reviewing your background, your actual background, not the fraudulent scandal, I'm inclined to agree. You built a successful translation business from scratch. You speak 7 languages fluently. You have a reputation for integrity that even your enemies couldn't completely destroy. That's exactly what we need." Claire's head was spinning. I haven't worked as a professional translator in 3 years. I'm rusty. I told you that last night. Rust wears off with practice. Talent doesn't disappear just because you stopped using it for a while. This is insane, Claire said. You can't just hire someone based on one interaction. We're not. We're hiring you based on 15 years of proven excellence, 7 fluent languages, and the fact that you risked your job to call out fraud when you saw it. The rest is just details. The door opened before Claire could respond. Ethan Calloway walked in carrying 2 coffee cups and looking significantly less polished than he had last night. His suit was perfect, but there were shadows under his eyes and his tie was slightly crooked like he'd done it in a hurry. "Sorry I'm late," he said, setting one of the coffee cups in front of Claire. "My son decided this morning was the perfect time to have a meltdown about wearing shoes to school. Apparently shoes are tyranny." The image was so unexpected, this billionaire CEO arguing with a small child about footwear, that Claire almost laughed. "How old is he?" she asked. 5, going on 15. Ethan took the seat next to David. "Did Chen walk you through everything?" "He found Marcus Roth," Claire said. "Michael Ross," David corrected. "Right, that." Ethan took a sip of his coffee. "We can discuss what to do about him later. First, I want to talk about the job offer." "Mr. Chen mentioned it. And what do you think?" Claire looked between them. David with his composed professionalism. Ethan with his rumpled tie and tired eyes. 2 men who should have been complete strangers offering her a lifeline she didn't know how to accept. "I think you're both crazy," she said honestly. "I think you're making a decision based on incomplete information and one night where I happened to be in the right place at the right time. I think this is a terrible idea." "But," Ethan prompted, "but I don't have a lot of other options right now, so if you're serious about this, I'm willing to try. With some conditions." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "I want a probationary period, 3 months. If it's not working out, either side can walk away. No hard feelings. I want to meet your team before I accept, the people I'd be working with. And I want it in writing that if this goes sideways, you won't hold it against me when I'm looking for my next job." "Done," Ethan said immediately. "You didn't even think about it." "I don't need to. Those are all reasonable requests. Chen, can you draft something up?" David was already making notes. "I'll have a contract ready by this afternoon." This was happening too fast. Claire felt like she was on a train that had already left the station, and she'd forgotten to check where it was going. "Can I ask you something?" she said, looking at Ethan. "Why are you doing this? And don't tell me it's just because I helped you last night. People don't hire strangers for executive positions because of one good deed." Ethan was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. "My wife died 2 years ago," he said finally. "Car accident. She was coming home from a work event. Some drunk driver ran a red light, and just like that, she was gone. Left me alone with a 3-year-old who didn't understand why his mother wasn't coming home." Claire's throat tightened. She hadn't expected that level of honesty. "I'm sorry," she said. "Everyone is," Ethan said. "That's what they all say. I'm sorry for your loss. She was such a wonderful person. If there's anything I can do..." But nobody actually does anything. They just say the words and move on. He looked up at her then, and his eyes were harder than they'd been a moment ago. "You know what the worst part is? People started treating me differently. Like I was broken, fragile. Like I couldn't be trusted to make good decisions because I was grieving. My own board tried to push me out, said I needed to step down temporarily to focus on my family. Translation: they thought I was too emotionally compromised to run the company." "That's horrible," Claire said. "It was. But it taught me something important. When everything in your life falls apart, you learn very quickly who actually sees you as a person and who just sees a problem to manage." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Last night, you could have walked away. You should have walked away. You had every reason to keep your head down and protect yourself. But you didn't. You saw something wrong and you spoke up, even though it could have cost you everything. That tells me more about who you are than any resume ever could." Claire didn't know what to say to that. "I'm hiring you because I need people around me who I can trust," Ethan continued. "People who will tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. People who understand what it's like to have everything fall apart and have to rebuild from nothing. You've been there. You get it. That's worth more than experience." "I could still screw this up," Claire said quietly. "You could. So could I. But I'd rather fail working with someone who gives a damn than succeed with people who are just going through the motions. He stood up. Think about it. Take the day. Talk to the team. See if this is something you actually want. But I hope you say yes, Claire. I really do. Then he was gone, leaving Claire alone with David Chen and a job offer that felt like either a miracle or a disaster waiting to happen. He means it, you know, David said after a moment. The part about needing people he can trust. The last 2 years have been rough on him. The board situation, raising his son alone, trying to run a company while dealing with grief that doesn't care about quarterly earnings reports. Why are you telling me this? Claire asked. Because if you take this job, you should know what you're walking into. Ethan's a good boss, fair, generous, brilliant at what he does. But he's also stubborn, occasionally reckless, and tends to make decisions based on gut instinct that give his lawyers heart attacks. David smiled slightly. Present company included. Sounds exhausting. It is. It's also never boring. He closed his portfolio and stood. I'll give you some time to think. Jennifer can set up meetings with the team for this afternoon if you'd like. Or you can take the day and let us know tomorrow. Whatever works for you. Claire stayed in the conference room after he left, staring out at the view of Sydney spread beneath her like a promise. This was insane. She should walk away. Go back to the restaurant, keep her head down, survive like she'd been surviving for the past 3 years. But her mother's voice echoed in her head. You're going to be all right, Claire. Better than all right. Something tells me things are about to change for you. Her phone buzzed, a text from the hospital. Your mother asked me to tell you she's proud of you, whatever you decide. Nurse Patterson. Claire blinked back tears and made her decision. She met the team that afternoon. There were 12 people in the translation services department, and they all looked varying degrees of skeptical when Jennifer introduced her as their potential new director. Claire didn't blame them. She'd be skeptical too if some stranger showed up claiming to speak 7 languages and got hired based on one dramatic confrontation. The current acting head was a woman named Patricia Mendoza, who'd been with the company for 8 years and clearly resented being passed over for the permanent position. So you speak 7 languages, Patricia said, her tone making it clear she didn't believe it. That's impressive. Most people exaggerate their skills on their resume. I'm not exaggerating, Claire said evenly. Would you like me to demonstrate? Sure, let's start with Mandarin. Tell me about your experience with technical translation in Chinese. They spent the next 20 minutes with Patricia firing questions in various languages, testing Claire's vocabulary, her grammar, her understanding of cultural nuances. It was clearly meant to be intimidating. It was also the most alive Claire had felt in 3 years. She answered in fluent Mandarin, then switched to Japanese when Patricia changed tactics, then to Portuguese when Patricia tried to catch her off guard. She discussed the differences between European and Brazilian Portuguese, explained the challenges of translating legal documents from German, talked about the importance of understanding context in Spanish, because the same word could mean completely different things in Mexico versus Argentina. By the end, Patricia's skepticism had shifted to grudging respect. Okay, she admitted, you know your stuff. But knowing languages isn't the same as managing a team or handling the corporate politics that come with this job. You're right, Claire said. I'm going to mess up. Probably a lot at first. Which is why I'm going to need people who actually know what they're doing to help me figure it out. People like you. Patricia blinked. What? You've been here 8 years. You know how this company works. You know the clients, the processes, the problems that I'm going to walk into blind. I can speak the languages, but I can't do this job without people who understand the context. So if I take this position, I'm going to need you, if you're willing. It was a gamble. Patricia could have told her to go to hell, could have decided that working under someone with less experience was an insult. Instead, she nodded slowly. I can work with that. The rest of the team seemed to relax after that. They spent the next hour walking Claire through current projects, explaining the workflow, pointing out the problems they'd been dealing with. Translation requests that sat in limbo for weeks, clients who got frustrated with delays, contracts that came back with errors no one caught until it was too late. It was a mess. But it was a mess Claire understood. By the time she left the building at 5:30, her brain was overflowing with information and her feet hurt from walking around in heels she wasn't used to wearing anymore. But she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. She called her mother from the train. "How did it go?" Isabel asked. She sounded tired but alert. "I think I'm going to take the job." "Of course you are. I would have disowned you if you didn't." Claire laughed despite herself. "It's crazy, Mom. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to screw up." "Probably, but you'll figure it out. You always do." "I'm scared." "Good. Being scared means you care about getting it right. It's the people who aren't scared who make the really stupid mistakes." They talked for a few more minutes before Isabel needed to rest. Before hanging up, her mother said, "Your father would tell you that words are bridges. You're just learning how to build them again." Claire sat with that thought all the way home. The contract arrived by email at 7 that evening. David Chen had been thorough. 3-month probationary period. Salary that made Claire's eyes water. Benefits that included health insurance comprehensive enough to actually help with her mother's care, and a clause stating that if the arrangement didn't work out, Callaway Industries would provide a professional reference for her next position. It was everything she'd asked for, and more than she'd expected. She signed it before she could talk herself out of it. Her phone rang 30 seconds later. Ethan. "You signed," he said. "I signed." "Good. Start Monday, 9 o'clock. Patricia will help you get oriented." "Thank you," Claire said, "for taking a chance on someone you barely know. Thank you for being someone worth taking a chance on." He paused. "Fair warning. The learning curve is going to be brutal. We have 3 major contracts in negotiation right now, all of them in different languages, and they're all behind schedule because our previous translators were either incompetent or actively sabotaging us. No pressure then. None at all." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Get some rest this weekend. You're going to need it." He hung up. Claire sat in her tiny apartment looking at the signed contract on her phone and tried to process the fact that her life had just changed completely in the span of 24 hours. One conversation, one moment of courage, one billionaire who believed in people instead of just resumes. It shouldn't have been enough. But somehow, impossibly, it was. She went back to the restaurant that Friday to give her notice. Marcus, the head waiter, looked annoyed but not particularly surprised. "Corporate job?" he asked. "Something like that." "Well, good luck. Try not to get yourself fired for sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." Claire smiled sweetly. "I'll do my best." She worked her final shift that Saturday night, carrying wine bottles and clearing plates and being invisible one last time. Several of the other servers asked where she was going, what she'd be doing. She kept her answers vague, partially because she didn't want to jinx anything, and partially because she still couldn't quite believe it was real. On Sunday, she went to see her mother. Isabel was having a good day, alert and comfortable, with enough energy to sit up and have an actual conversation instead of drifting in and out of medicated sleep. "Tomorrow's the big day," she said. "Are you ready?" "Absolutely not," Claire admitted. "I'm terrified." "Perfect. That means you're taking it seriously." Isabel reached for her hand. "I want you to promise me something." "What?" "Stop punishing yourself for what happened 3 years ago. You didn't do anything wrong. You trusted someone who betrayed you. That's not a character flaw, sweetheart. That's just bad luck." "It feels like more than luck," Claire said quietly. "I know, but it wasn't. Marcus Roth is a con artist who saw an opportunity and took it. You were his victim, not his accomplice. And you've spent 3 years acting like you deserved what happened to you. You didn't. So stop." "I don't know how to do that." "Yes, you do. You start by showing up tomorrow and doing the job. You stop apologizing for being good at things. You stop making yourself small because you're afraid of taking up space. You be the person your father raised you to be." Tears were running down Claire's face. "I miss him. I miss who I was when he was alive." "Me too, baby. Every single day." Isabel squeezed her hand. "But he wouldn't want you to stay stuck in the past. He'd want you to move forward, build new bridges, connect people again." "Words build bridges," Claire whispered, remembering. Exactly. So go build something, sweetheart. Stop hiding from the world and show them what you can do." Claire left the hospital feeling lighter than she had in years, like maybe her mother was right. Maybe it was time to stop punishing herself for surviving. That night she couldn't sleep again, but this time it wasn't from anxiety. It was anticipation. Monday morning arrived with startling clarity. Bright sunshine after days of storms. The kind of weather that felt like a sign, even though Claire didn't really believe in signs. She put on the gray blazer one more time, practiced her professional smile in the mirror, and headed to Callaway Industries to start her new life. Or possibly destroy it spectacularly. Either way, she was done being invisible. The first week nearly killed her. Not literally, though there were moments on Wednesday afternoon when Claire seriously considered walking into traffic just to get out of translating another contract amendment about semiconductor distribution rights in Taiwan. But close enough. The problem wasn't the languages. Those came back faster than she'd expected, muscle memory kicking in after 3 years of disuse. By day 2, she was dreaming in German again, waking up with Portuguese phrases on her tongue, thinking in Mandarin while she brushed her teeth. No, the problem was everything else. The corporate politics she'd forgotten how to navigate. The endless meetings where people talked for 45 minutes without actually saying anything useful. The email chains that spawned like hydras. Answer one question and 3 more appeared in its place. The constant pressure of being the new person, the one everyone was watching to see if she'd fail. Patricia helped. More than Claire had any right to expect, honestly. The older woman took her through the current project list on Monday morning with the grim efficiency of a battlefield medic triaging casualties. "This one's bleeding out," Patricia said, pointing to a Japanese contract that was 3 weeks overdue. Clients threatening to walk. Previous translator kept mixing up formal and casual registers, which apparently offended everyone involved. "You'll need to start over from scratch." "Great," Claire muttered, already making notes. "This one's stable but complicated." A French negotiation for some kind of luxury goods distribution. Both parties are being deliberately vague about terms because nobody wants to commit to anything concrete. Your job is to translate the vagueness without accidentally creating clarity that pisses everyone off. That sounds impossible. It is. Welcome to corporate translation. Patricia flipped to the next file. And this one is the migraine that keeps on giving. German pharmaceutical company, Chinese manufacturing partner, negotiations happening in English because nobody trusts anybody, and every single email chain devolves into arguments about whose translation is more accurate. Claire's head was already pounding. How many active projects are there total? 47. 12 are critical, 23 are important. The rest are routine but still need attention, or they'll become critical. Patricia looked at her over her reading glasses. Any questions? Yeah. How the hell did the previous director manage all this? He didn't. That's why everything's a disaster. Patricia closed the file. He spent most of his time playing golf with executives and delegating everything to translators who weren't qualified to handle it. Hence the mess you inherited. Hence the mess, Claire repeated weakly. By Tuesday afternoon, she'd made it through exactly 3 of the critical projects and discovered 2 more problems the previous director had swept under the rug. A Spanish contract with inverted penalty clauses that would cost the company millions if anyone actually enforced them. A Mandarin agreement where someone had confused simplified and traditional characters in a way that completely changed the meaning of a key provision. How did nobody catch this? Claire demanded, staring at her screen in disbelief. Nobody was looking, Patricia said from the desk next to hers, and the clients probably assumed we knew what we were doing. We absolutely did not know what we were doing. No, but we're fixing it now, so stop panicking and start drafting the correction memo. Claire drafted the memo. Then she drafted 17 other memos, reviewed 6 contracts, handled a crisis involving a Korean client who'd received the wrong version of an agreement, and stayed at the office until 9 p.m. trying to catch up on everything she'd missed while handling the previous emergencies. She got home to her apartment, microwaved leftover takeout that tasted like cardboard, and fell asleep on her couch still wearing her work clothes. Wednesday was worse. The German pharmaceutical negotiation exploded before she'd even finished her first coffee. Both parties showed up to the video conference furious about something, started yelling at each other in 3 different languages, and expected Claire to translate the yelling accurately while also somehow calming everyone down. She managed it. Barely. By the time the call ended 2 hours later, she had a stress headache that felt like someone was driving nails into her skull, and a new appreciation for why her father had died of a heart attack at 49. "You handled that well," Ethan said from the doorway of the conference room. Claire jumped. She hadn't realized he'd been watching. "I thought they were going to start throwing things at each other through the screen," she said. "They've done worse. Last month, one of them rage quit a negotiation by literally flipping the table." Ethan came into the room and closed the door behind him. You look exhausted. I am exhausted. Your previous director left me with 47 active disasters and apparently no functional system for managing any of them. I know. I'm sorry. If I'd realized how bad it was, I would have warned you. Would you? Claire asked. Or would you have worried I'd turn down the job? Ethan had the grace to look slightly guilty. Maybe both. Fantastic. She rubbed her temples, trying to massage away the headache. I'm starting to think you hired me just to watch me drown. I hired you because you're the first person in 3 years who actually gave a damn about getting the words right. He pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. But I also hired you because I knew you could handle this, even if it doesn't feel like you can right now. That's a lot of faith in someone you barely know. I'm good at reading people. It's kind of a job requirement when you're responsible for a company this size. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. You want to know what I saw when you walked into that restaurant and called out the translator? Not particularly. I saw someone who was terrified but did the right thing anyway. That's rare, Claire. Most people fold when it costs them something. You didn't. I almost did. I had my hand on the door handle. I was leaving. But you turned around. That's what matters. Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she changed the subject. Patricia said you had a board meeting this afternoon. How'd it go? Ethan's expression darkened. About as well as your conference call. A lot of yelling in corporate speak, everyone pretending to be civil while actually trying to knife each other under the table. Sounds fun. It's a nightmare. Half of them still think I should have stepped down after Sarah died. They smile at me in meetings and then try to undermine every decision I make. He ran a hand through his hair, making it stick up at odd angles. Sorry, you don't need to hear about my problems when you're dealing with your own. It's fine, Claire said. And oddly enough, it was. There was something almost comforting about knowing the CEO was drowning in his own disasters, same as her. Misery loves company or whatever. That got a short laugh out of him. Yeah, something like that. They sat in silence for a moment, two people who were barely more than strangers sharing the quiet exhaustion of a Wednesday that had tried to break them both. My son wants to meet you, Ethan said suddenly. Claire blinked. What? Oliver, my 5-year-old. I mentioned that I'd hired a new translator who speaks 7 languages, and now he's convinced you're some kind of superhero. Keeps asking when he can meet the language lady. I'm not a superhero. Try telling that to a 5-year-old who just learned that people can talk to each other in different words. He thinks it's magic. Despite everything, Claire smiled. It kind of is magic when you think about it. So would you? Meet him, I mean. No pressure if you're not comfortable with it. I know it's weird to meet your boss's kid, but he's been through a lot, and he gets excited about things so rarely these days that I try to encourage it when I can. There were about 17 reasons why this was a terrible idea. Getting personally involved with her boss's family, blurring professional boundaries, setting herself up for complications she definitely didn't need. But there was something in Ethan's expression, a vulnerability he was trying to hide and failing at, that made her say yes anyway. Sure, I'd like to meet him. Yeah? Yeah. Fair warning though, I'm terrible with kids. Never know what to say to them. Oliver does most of the talking anyway. You'll be fine. Thursday brought a new crisis. David Chen called her into his office with an expression that told Claire something had gone very, very wrong. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Remember the translator who tried to screw over the German deal? Hard to forget. He's suing us for wrongful termination and defamation. Claire felt her stomach drop. What? Claims Ethan fired him without cause and damaged his professional reputation by spreading false accusations about his competence. David slid a legal document across his desk. It's complete garbage, obviously, but garbage we still have to respond to. Claire read through the complaint, her anger building with every paragraph. The translator was claiming she'd fabricated the entire incident, that she'd mistranslated deliberately to make him look bad, that Ethan had conspired with her to get him fired so they could hire her instead. This is insane, she said. There were 3 people in that room, 4 if you count the waitress who served the wine. Everyone heard what he said. I know, but proving it in court is going to be expensive and time-consuming. And he knows that. This isn't about winning. It's about causing enough trouble that we settle just to make him go away. So what do we do? We fight. I'm not letting some con artist extort this company because he got caught being incompetent. David's expression was hard. But I need you to write down everything you remember from that night. Every word he mistranslated, every lie he told, exact quotes if you can manage it. My memory's not perfect. It doesn't have to be. Just write what you remember clearly. I'll handle the rest. Claire spent the rest of Thursday reconstructing the disaster at the restaurant, digging through her memory for every detail she could recall. By the time she finished, she had 8 pages of documented lies and a renewed appreciation for why her father had always insisted that translators were either bridges or weapons, depending on who wielded them. Friday afternoon, Ethan found her in the break room, attempting to resurrect herself through sheer caffeine willpower. "You survived your first week," he said. "Barely." Claire looked at him over her coffee cup. "Does it always feel like controlled chaos, or is this week special?" "This week is actually pretty calm. Wait until we hit earnings season." "Oh, fantastic. Something to look forward to." Ethan grabbed his own coffee and leaned against the counter. "Oliver's been asking about you every night this week. I promised him I'd see if you were free for dinner tomorrow. Nothing fancy, just pizza and a very enthusiastic 5-year-old who will probably interrogate you about every language you speak. Tomorrow's Saturday." "I know, you probably have plans. It's fine if, I don't have plans," Claire interrupted. "I was going to visit my mother at the hospital and then go home and sleep for 12 hours. But I can do dinner before the sleeping part." "You sure? I don't want to impose on your weekend." "Ethan, you're offering me pizza and a break from thinking about contracts. That's not an imposition. That's a humanitarian service." He smiled at that. 6 o'clock? "I'll text you the address." "I'll be there." Saturday evening found Claire standing outside a brownstone in one of Sydney's quieter neighborhoods, wondering what the hell she was doing. This wasn't a work dinner. This wasn't networking. This was her boss inviting her to meet his kid, and she had no idea what the appropriate protocol was for that. She'd brought a book as a gift, a children's picture book about different languages she'd found at a bookstore that morning. It felt inadequate and overly presumptuous at the same time. Before she could talk herself into leaving, the door opened. Ethan stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, looking more human than she'd ever seen him. No suit, no polished corporate armor, just a tired dad with flour on his shirt and what looked like marker on his hand. "You made it," he said. "Come in. Fair warning, Oliver drew on the walls again, and I'm pretending I don't see it until after dinner because I don't have the energy for another battle today." The house was exactly what Claire had expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Expensive, but lived in. Tasteful furniture covered in kid debris. Artwork on the walls that probably cost a fortune, next to crayon drawings taped up with equal importance. "Oliver," Ethan called. "Claire's here." Thundering footsteps, and then a small tornado in superhero pajamas came barreling around the corner. "You're the language lady," Oliver announced. "Dad says you can talk to people in 7 different words." 7 different languages, Ethan corrected. "That's what I said." Oliver looked up at Claire with enormous brown eyes. "Can you say something in all of them?" Claire crouched down to his eye level. "Sure. What should I say?" Say, Oliver is the coolest kid in the world in every language." "I don't know if I'm qualified to make that determination," Claire said seriously. "I haven't met every kid in the world. That seems like irresponsible journalism." Oliver giggled. "Just say it anyway." So she did. In English, Spanish, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, Mandarin, and Japanese, she told Oliver he was the coolest kid in the world. He made her repeat the Mandarin 3 times because he liked the way it sounded, and demanded she teach him how to say, "My dad is silly," in French. "Excellent," Oliver said when he'd mastered it. "Now I can insult him and he won't even know." "I'm standing right here," Ethan said, "and I took French in college." "Yeah, but you're bad at it. You said so." "I said I was rusty. There's a difference." They ate pizza in the kitchen while Oliver peppered Claire with approximately 900 questions about languages and how they worked and why people couldn't just all speak the same words and whether she could talk to animals too because that would be really cool. "Different question," Ethan said eventually, rescuing Claire from explaining that no, she could not speak dog. "But along the same lines. Claire, why did you become a translator?" She hadn't expected that. "My dad was a diplomat. We moved around a lot when I was a kid. Indonesia, Japan, Brazil, France. I learned languages because it was either that or have no friends. After he died, it felt like, I don't know, a way to keep him with me. He always said languages were about connection, building bridges between people who didn't understand each other. That's beautiful, Ethan said quietly. It's also naive. Turns out bridges can be burned just as easily as they're built. But you're building them again now. I'm trying. Not sure I'm any good at it anymore. You are, Ethan said. Patricia told me you saved the pharmaceutical deal on Wednesday. Both parties called her afterward to say it was the first productive conversation they'd had in months. They were still yelling at each other. But they were yelling productively. That's progress. Oliver had lost interest in the grown-up conversation and was now trying to build a tower out of pizza boxes. Claire watched him stack them carefully, his tongue sticking out in concentration. He looks like his mother, she said without thinking. Ethan glanced at Oliver, and something painful crossed his face. Yeah, he does. Same eyes, same stubborn chin. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. It's fine. People usually avoid mentioning her entirely, like if they don't say her name, she'll stay dead. It's weird. He took a sip of his beer. I'd rather people acknowledge she existed. What was she like? Smart, funny, had a temper like you wouldn't believe. We fought about the stupidest things. She once didn't speak to me for 2 days because I bought the wrong brand of coffee. He smiled at the memory. But she loved fiercely. Oliver, me, her work. She didn't do anything halfway. How'd you meet? Grad school. She was studying architecture. I was doing my MBA. We ended up assigned to the same group project and spent the entire semester arguing about everything. I asked her out the day after our final presentation, figuring if we could survive 12 weeks of constant disagreement, we could probably survive anything. Turns out you couldn't, Claire said quietly. No, but not because we weren't good together, just because some drunk asshole made a bad choice and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time. He looked at Oliver, who'd successfully built a 4-box tower and was attempting 5. Worst part is Oliver barely remembers her. I show him pictures, tell him stories, but she's becoming this abstract concept instead of a real person. His mom. Not someone he actually knew. Claire's throat was tight. My dad died when I was 15, old enough to remember him clearly. Sometimes I think that makes it worse. I know exactly what I lost. Yeah, Ethan said. That sounds worse. They sat in silence for a moment, watching Oliver play. Can I ask you something personal? Ethan said eventually. Depends on how personal. Your mother. You said she's in the hospital. How bad is it? Claire hadn't talked about this with anyone at work, hadn't wanted to bring her personal disasters into her professional life. But something about sitting in Ethan's kitchen with pizza grease on her fingers and his son building towers nearby made the wall between personal and professional feel less important. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, 18 months since diagnosis. We tried an experimental treatment for a while, but it didn't work. Now we're just waiting. I'm sorry. Everyone is. Claire echoed his words from earlier. But it doesn't change anything. No, it doesn't. He turned his beer bottle in his hands. Is that why you were working at the restaurant? To pay for treatment? Partially. Also because nobody else would hire me after the scandal, but yeah, medical bills are expensive, even with insurance. The company insurance we offer is better. I made sure of it after Sarah died, and I had to deal with all the paperwork. Should cover more of your mother's care. I know, I saw. She didn't know how to finish that sentence. It's more than I deserve. It's incredibly generous. It's making me feel guilty because I haven't earned it yet. It's just insurance, Ethan said, reading her expression. You don't have to feel weird about using it. I feel weird about everything right now. New job, new life, people being nice to me for no reason. It's disorienting. There's a reason. You're good at what you do. That's reason enough. Oliver's tower collapsed with a crash, and he looked devastated for approximately 3 seconds before deciding to build it again bigger. He bounces back fast, Claire observed. Has to. Life keeps knocking him down. Ethan stood up and started clearing plates. You want coffee? Dessert? Fair warning, the dessert is ice cream, and Oliver will demand you share with him. Ice cream sounds perfect. They moved to the living room with bowls of chocolate ice cream, while Oliver narrated an elaborate story about superhero penguins who saved the world through teamwork and also ice breath. Claire had no idea if she was supposed to be following the plot or just nodding encouragingly. She chose nodding. By 8:30, Oliver was fighting sleep and losing. Ethan carried him upstairs for bed, and Claire could hear the muffled sounds of bedtime negotiation through the ceiling. 5 more minutes. We already did 5 more minutes 3 times. It's time to sleep, buddy. But I'm not tired. Your eyes are literally closing while you're talking. When Ethan came back downstairs, he looked exhausted. Sorry, bedtime is always a production. Don't apologize. He's a great kid. He is. Most of the time. The other times, he's a tiny terrorist who thinks bedtime is a personal attack. Ethan collapsed onto the couch next to her. Thanks for coming tonight. I know it's weird, your boss inviting you to family dinner, but Oliver needed something to be excited about. And honestly, so did I. It wasn't weird, Claire said. Or maybe it was, but in a good way. I haven't had dinner with people I can't remember how long, just me and takeout and silence most nights. That sounds lonely. It is, but it's been safer than trying to connect with people who might bail when things get complicated. She looked at him. You're going to ask why I'm telling you all this. I was thinking it. I don't know. Maybe because you told me about your wife. Maybe because I'm too tired to maintain professional boundaries. Maybe because you're the first person in 3 years who looked at me and saw someone capable instead of someone broken. You're not broken, Claire. Everyone keeps saying that. I'm starting to wonder if it's true. It is. He shifted to face her. You know what broken people do? They give up. They stop trying. They let the world convince them they're worthless and they accept it. You didn't do that. You survived. That's not broken. That's strength. Strength that got me exactly nowhere for 3 years. Strength that got you through 3 years until you were ready to move forward. There's a difference. Claire wanted to argue, but she was too exhausted and he was too close, and something about the way he was looking at her made her forget what she was going to say. I should go, she said instead. It's late and you're probably tired of me oversharing about my dysfunctional life. I'm not. Ethan stood when she did, walked her to the door. Same time next week, if you're free. Oliver will lose his mind if you don't come back. Just Oliver? The question came out before Claire could stop it. Too flirtatious, too familiar, too much honesty in her voice. Ethan looked at her for a long moment. No, not just Oliver. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. Next week then, she managed. Next week. She left before she could do something stupid like kiss him, or confess that she hadn't felt this comfortable with another person in longer than she could remember, or admit that she was starting to care about both the man and his kid in ways that were definitely not professional. The following week brought more chaos. The lawsuit from the Translator moved forward despite David Chen's attempts to get it dismissed. Patricia discovered 3 more critical projects that had been mishandled. The Japanese contract fell apart when the client decided they wanted different terms entirely. But Claire also had dinner with Ethan and Oliver on Saturday, and then the next Saturday, and the one after that. It became a routine. Pizza or pasta or takeout Chinese. Oliver's elaborate stories. Ethan's dry commentary. The easy conversation that happened when people stopped pretending everything was fine and just admitted life was messy. By the end of her 2nd month, Claire had her apartment under control, most of the critical projects stabilized, and something that felt dangerously close to happiness. Which of course was when everything exploded. David Chen called her on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice tight. We have a problem. Remember Marcus Roth? Or Michael Ross? Whatever he's calling himself these days? Claire's blood went cold. What about him? He's connected to the Translator lawsuit, and to your previous scandal, and possibly to some of the contract problems we've been having. David paused. Claire, I think someone's been sabotaging this company specifically to hurt Ethan, and I think your former partner is involved. The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun Claire hadn't known was pointed at her. Say that again, she said slowly, gripping her phone so hard her knuckles went white. Slowly, David's sigh crackled through the speaker. I've been going through financial records for the past 6 weeks, tracking the translation department's contract problems back to their source. The pattern didn't make sense at first. Random errors, missed deadlines, miscommunications that seemed isolated. But they're not isolated, Claire. They're coordinated. Coordinated by who? That's where it gets complicated. The translator we fired? The one suing us? His name is Richard Brennan. Except it's not. Richard Brennan is an alias. His real name is Andrew Kelly, and he worked for your old company 5 years ago. Claire's stomach dropped through the floor. That's impossible. I would have recognized him. Would you? You had 12 employees back then. Did you personally interact with all of them? She tried to remember. The company had been growing fast in those last 2 years before it all fell apart. She'd been handling high-level negotiations, traveling constantly, trusting Marcus to manage the day-to-day operations and hiring. No, she admitted. Marcus handled most of the junior staff. Exactly. And Andrew Kelly was a junior translator who worked there for 7 months before quitting, right before your company collapsed. No warning, no explanation, just disappeared. David paused. Want to guess where he went? Singapore. Singapore, where he worked for a consulting firm owned by Michael Ross for 18 months before coming to Australia under a new identity and getting hired by Callaway Industries 6 months ago. The room was spinning. Claire sat down hard in her desk chair before her legs gave out. So Marcus planted him here, she said. But why? What does destroying Ethan's company have to do with what happened 3 years ago? That's what I'm trying to figure out. But Claire, there's more. 3 of our recent contract problems trace back to companies that have financial ties to Ross's consulting firm. The pharmaceutical deal that kept falling apart, the Chinese manufacturing negotiation that collapsed last month, both connected to shell companies in Singapore that link back to him. He's been sabotaging Callaway Industries from the inside and the outside. Claire felt sick. How long? At least 6 months, possibly longer. And here's the part that's going to make you angry. The Translator lawsuit? It's a smokescreen. He's not trying to win. He's trying to drag out discovery so he can dig into our confidential business information and find more ways to cause damage. Claire stood up and started pacing, her mind racing. Does Ethan know? I'm briefing him in 20 minutes. I wanted to tell you first because this is going to get messy and you deserve a warning. A warning about what? About the fact that Marcus Roth clearly hasn't forgotten about you. And whatever he's doing here, it's personal. David's voice softened slightly. Claire, be careful. People who hold grudges this long don't let go easily. She ended the call and stared at her reflection in the dark computer screen. 3 years. 3 years she'd spent rebuilding her life from rubble, and Marcus was still out there actively trying to destroy her. No, not just her. Ethan too now. And his company, and by extension, everyone who worked here. The anger that rose in her chest was white-hot and clarifying. She grabbed her bag and headed for the elevator. Ethan's office was on the 63rd floor, separated from the rest of the company by a reception area staffed by an assistant who looked like she could kill someone with a letter opener if needed. I need to see Ethan, Claire said. Mr. Callaway is in a meeting with legal counsel, the assistant said smoothly. I can schedule you for... It's about the meeting with legal counsel. I'm Claire Bennett. David Chen is expecting me. The assistant's expression shifted slightly. One moment. She spoke quietly into her headset, then nodded toward the heavy wooden door. Go ahead. Claire walked in without knocking. Ethan was standing by the window, David seated at the conference table with his laptop open and documents spread everywhere. They both looked up when she entered. I know about Marcus, Claire said without preamble. David called me, and I know you're about to have a conversation about what to do about it, but I need to say something first. Ethan exchanged a glance with David. Okay, this is my fault, all of it. Marcus is doing this because of me, because I'm here. He knew I'd been blacklisted, knew I was desperate, probably figured I'd never find decent work again. And then I showed up at Callaway Industries and that broke whatever plan he had going. That's a lot of assumptions, David said. Is it? He plants a saboteur in your company 6 months ago. Everything's going fine until I get hired. Then suddenly the Translator lawsuit happens, the contract problems escalate, and according to you, there are connections to companies Marcus owns. Claire looked at Ethan. He's targeting you because you hired me, which means I should... Don't, Ethan interrupted. Don't finish that sentence. If you're about to suggest quitting, the answer is no. You don't understand. This isn't going to stop. Marcus doesn't give up. He destroyed my entire life because I caught him stealing from the company. What do you think he's going to do to you for giving me a second chance? I don't care. You should care. You have a son, a company, thousands of employees depending on you. You can't risk all of that because what? Ethan's voice was sharp now. Because I hired a talented translator who happened to have a psychopath ex-partner, you think I'm going to let some con artist dictate who I employ? I think you're being stubborn and stupid, and you're going to regret this. Probably. I regret a lot of things, but hiring you isn't going to be one of them. David cleared his throat. As touching as this argument is, could we maybe focus on the actual problem, which is figuring out what Marcus Roth wants and how to stop him from getting it? Claire turned to him. What he wants is revenge. On me for discovering his fraud, and now on Ethan for believing in me when nobody else would. That's personal motivation. But there's money involved too. The contract sabotage isn't just about hurting the company. It's redirecting business to firms he controls. David pulled up a spreadsheet. In the past 6 months, 3 major deals that should have gone to Callaway Industries ended up going to competitors. Those competitors are owned by shell companies that trace back to Singapore. How much money are we talking about? Ethan asked. Conservatively, $50 million in lost revenue, possibly more. Ethan swore under his breath. And you think this Andrew Kelly has been feeding him information the whole time? I think Andrew Kelly has been deliberately screwing up translations to make deals fall apart. Then Marcus swoops in through his other companies to pick up the pieces. It's actually kind of brilliant in a sociopathic way. So we fire Kelly, Claire said. We expose what he's doing, and we cut off Marcus's access to inside information. We already fired him, David pointed out. That's why he's suing us. And unfortunately, firing someone for being a saboteur requires proof that will hold up in court. Right now, all we have is suspicious connections and circumstantial evidence. Then we get better evidence. How? Ethan asked. We can't exactly break into his apartment and search for incriminating documents. Claire thought about it. About Marcus and his patterns and the way he operated. He was arrogant, always had been. He thought he was the smartest person in every room, and that arrogance made him sloppy. He'll make a mistake, she said. People like Marcus always do. They can't help themselves. They have to gloat. That's not a strategy, David said. That's hope. It's better than nothing. Claire started pacing. What if we give him something to gloat about? Something that looks like a victory but is actually a trap? Ethan's eyes narrowed. What kind of trap? I don't know yet, but he thinks he's winning. He thinks he's got us scrambling and defensive. What if we let him keep thinking that while we gather actual evidence? David was already shaking his head. Too risky. If we pretend to be vulnerable, we might actually become vulnerable. These are real contracts with real money at stake. So we use a fake contract, Claire said. We create a negotiation that looks valuable but isn't. We let Andrew Kelly's lawyer access it during discovery. We wait for Marcus to take the bait and try to sabotage it. And when he does, we have proof. Silence filled the office. That's actually not terrible, David said slowly. It's ethically questionable and possibly illegal depending on how we execute it, but it's not terrible. I hate it, Ethan said. I hate using Claire as bait. I hate playing games with someone who's already proven he's willing to destroy people for profit. But I don't have a better idea. Neither do I, David admitted. Which means we're actually considering this insanity. They spent the next 2 hours working out the details. A fake contract negotiation with a fictional Chinese manufacturer. Big enough to be tempting. Complicated enough to require translation services. Structured in a way that would make it easy for Marcus to redirect it to one of his shell companies if he thought he could sabotage it successfully. Claire would handle the translation personally. They'd make it look like she was struggling, like the deal was falling apart due to her incompetence. Classic Marcus bait. The chance to prove she was as worthless as he'd always claimed. This feels wrong, Claire said as they finalized the plan. Like we're stooping to his level. We're not, Ethan said firmly. He ruins people for profit. We're protecting people from being ruined. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Intent matters. Consequences matter. He's destroying lives. We're trying to stop him. David closed his laptop. I'll set up the fake contract documentation. Create a paper trail that looks legitimate. We'll need to involve a few people on our end who can play along convincingly. Patricia, Claire said immediately. She's smart enough to pull it off and angry enough about the department mess to want payback. Anyone else? Claire thought about her team. Most of them were competent, but not particularly invested beyond their paychecks. But there was one person who'd been asking questions about the previous director's mistakes. James Wu. He's been with the company for 3 years, speaks Mandarin and Cantonese fluently. He's been helping me clean up some of the Chinese contract problems, and he's sharp enough to notice something's off with our workflow. Can we trust him? Ethan asked. I think so, but I'll feel him out before we bring him in. They agreed to reconvene in 2 days once David had the fake contract framework ready. Claire left the office feeling like she'd just signed up for something that would either save her reputation or destroy what was left of it. There was no in-between with Marcus. There never had been. She found Patricia still at her desk, even though it was past 7. We need to talk, Claire said. Somewhere private. Patricia looked up from her screen, took in Claire's expression, and grabbed her bag. There's a bar 2 blocks from here, quiet enough to have actual conversations. 20 minutes later, they were tucked into a corner booth with whiskey neither of them was drinking yet. How much do you know about my background? Claire asked. Enough. I Googled you when Ethan first hired you, found the scandal, found the accusations. Also found about 6 articles from before everything fell apart, where people called you one of the most talented translators in the industry. Patricia took a sip of her drink. Figured the truth was somewhere in the middle. The truth is, I was good at my job and terrible at seeing betrayal coming. My business partner stole $2 million and framed me for it. I've spent 3 years trying to survive while he's been living in Singapore under a fake name running the same scam on other people. And now he's targeting Callaway Industries because Ethan hired you. It wasn't a question. David told you, Claire said. David tells me everything eventually. We've worked together for 5 years. He trusts me to keep my mouth shut and handle things that need handling. Patricia leaned back in the booth. So what's the plan? And don't tell me there isn't one. You have that look people get when they're about to do something either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Claire explained the trap they were setting. The fake contract. The deliberate vulnerability. The hope that Marcus would be arrogant enough to fall for it. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. That's either going to work perfectly or blow up in all our faces, she said when Claire finished. I know. And you're willing to risk your new job on it. I'm willing to risk everything on it. Because if we don't stop him now, he's going to keep coming. He'll destroy Ethan's company piece by piece until there's nothing left. And I'm not going to let that happen. Why? Patricia asked bluntly. You barely know Ethan. You've been here 2 months. Why risk everything for a company that's not even yours? Claire thought about Saturday dinners, about Oliver's elaborate superhero stories, about Ethan's tired smile when she showed up at his door with takeout, about feeling like she belonged somewhere for the first time in 3 years. Because he gave me a chance when nobody else would, she said quietly. Because he looked at me and saw someone capable instead of someone broken. Because I'm tired of running from Marcus, and I'm tired of letting him win. Patricia studied her for a long moment. You're in love with him. What? No, that's not... Please. I've been watching you 2 dance around each other for weeks. The way he looks at you when you're not paying attention. The way you light up when he walks into a room. You're both ridiculous, and it's actually kind of sweet. Claire felt her face heating. It's not like that. We're friends. He's my boss. It would be completely inappropriate to what? Have feelings for someone who clearly has feelings for you? Patricia's expression softened. Claire, life's too short to pretend you don't care about people just because the timing's inconvenient. Trust me on that one. There's a story there. There's always a story, but we're not talking about my disasters tonight. Patricia drained her glass. I'm in. For the fake contract plan. For helping you take down your psycho ex-partner. For whatever comes next. But you need to promise me something. What? When this is over, you're going to stop pretending you're just here for the paycheck. You're going to admit that you care about this company and the people in it. Especially the one on the 63rd floor with a 5-year-old and a terrible habit of making decisions based on gut instinct. Claire wanted to argue, to maintain the professional distance she'd been trying so hard to preserve. But Patricia was right. Somewhere between Saturday dinners and crisis translations and watching Ethan be both a CEO and a single father, she'd stopped pretending this was just a job. Okay, she said. I promise. They spent another hour planning logistics, how to make the fake contract look authentic, which team members to involve, how to ensure Andrew Kelly's lawyers would access the right documents during discovery. By the time Claire got home, it was past 10 and she was exhausted. But she also felt something she hadn't felt in 3 years. Powerful. Like maybe she could actually fight back instead of just surviving. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Are you sure about this?" "It's not too late to back out." She typed back. "I'm sure. He's been winning for too long. Time to change that." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Thank you. For caring enough to fight. Thank you for giving me something worth fighting for." She sent it before she could overthink it, then immediately regretted being that honest. But Ethan just sent back a simple, "Saturday, same time. Oliver wants to teach you the superhero penguin dance he learned at school." Claire smiled despite everything. "I'll be there." The next 2 weeks were carefully orchestrated chaos. David created an entire fictional Chinese manufacturing company, complete with website, business registration, and a convincing backstory. Patricia worked with their Hong Kong office to generate fake correspondence that would make the deal look legitimate. Claire brought James Wu into the plan after 3 careful conversations where she tested his loyalty and discretion. He was suspicious at first, then angry when he understood the scope of Marcus's sabotage, then grimly determined to help. "I've been cleaning up messes for 6 months," he said. Finally nice to know it wasn't just incompetence. It was malicious. They structured the fake negotiation to look like it was falling apart in slow motion. Translation errors that seemed plausible, miscommunications that felt authentic. Claire deliberately made herself look overwhelmed and struggling. It was easier than it should have been, pretending to be incompetent when she'd spent 3 years being treated like she was. The hardest part was maintaining normal life while orchestrating the trap. Going to work every day knowing Andrew Kelly's lawyers were combing through documents, sitting through meetings pretending everything was fine, having Saturday dinner with Ethan and Oliver while hiding the fact that she was terrified this whole plan would collapse. "You're quiet tonight," Ethan said during their 3rd Saturday since the plan started. Oliver had already passed out on the couch mid-superhero story, exhausted from a school field trip. "Just tired," Claire said. It wasn't entirely a lie. "Liar." He said it gently, without accusation. "You're worried about the plan. Aren't you?" Terrified. "But I'm also trusting that you know what you're doing." He was sitting close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, and it was getting harder to remember why keeping distance was important. What if I don't? What if we're wrong about Marcus taking the bait? What if he's 3 steps ahead of us and we're walking into his trap instead of him walking into ours? Then we'll deal with it, together. Ethan reached over and took her hand. "You're not alone in this, Claire. Whatever happens, you're not facing it alone." His hand was warm and solid and steady, and Claire realized she was gripping it like a lifeline. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Not of Marcus. Of this. Of caring about people again. Of letting myself believe things could actually work out." "Yeah," Ethan said. "That's terrifying. Way scarier than corporate sabotage." She laughed despite herself. "You're supposed to tell me it'll be fine." "I don't know if it'll be fine. I just know it's worth trying." He squeezed her hand. "Sarah used to say that the worst thing about grief isn't the pain. It's the fear of feeling anything good again, because you know it could be taken away. I spent 2 years believing that, being careful, keeping everyone at arm's length, because if I didn't care, I couldn't lose anything." "What changed?" "You did. You walked into that restaurant and risked everything for a stranger. You took a job you were terrified of taking. You showed up here every Saturday, even though being around a grieving widower and his kid couldn't have been easy. You were brave when I was still trying to figure out how to be human again." Claire's eyes were burning. "I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being afraid." "That's what brave is. It's being afraid and doing it anyway." They sat there in silence, holding hands on his couch, while Oliver snored softly in the background. It felt domestic and terrifying, and exactly right. "When this is over," Ethan said quietly, "when we've dealt with Marcus and the lawsuit and all the corporate disaster stuff, can we talk about this? About us? There is no us. I work for you. It would be completely inappropriate." "Claire," she stopped. "I'm not asking for a decision now. I'm not asking you to risk your job or your reputation or anything else. I'm just asking if we can have a conversation, when the timing's less terrible, about the fact that I care about you and I think you might care about me too." "I do," she whispered. "Care about you. Both of you. So much it scares me." "Good. Being scared together is better than being scared alone. Her phone buzzed. David. We got him. Kelly's lawyers accessed the fake contract files this morning, and there was unusual network activity from Singapore 30 minutes later. Marcus took the bait. Claire showed Ethan the message. Now we wait, he said. Now we wait, she agreed. The waiting was agony. 3 days passed, then 5. Claire kept translating the fake contract, kept making deliberate mistakes, kept playing the part of someone overwhelmed and failing. On day 7, David called an emergency meeting. Marcus made his move. He contacted the fictional Chinese company through one of his shell corporations offering better terms, promised them he could get them a deal with a more reliable partner. Did they take it? Claire asked. They don't exist, so no. But he doesn't know that yet. He thinks he's successfully poached our client. David smiled grimly. And he was stupid enough to put it in writing, email communications, contract proposals, all linking back to him personally. Is it enough? Ethan asked. For the lawsuit? For charges? It's enough to prove systematic sabotage and corporate espionage. Combined with what we found in Singapore about his previous fraud, it's enough to bury him. Claire felt something loosen in her chest. 3 years. 3 years of Marcus winning, and finally, they had him. What happens now? She asked. Now I hand this over to the authorities, both here and in Singapore. They're going to want to talk to you, Claire, about the original fraud, about everything that happened. She'd known this was coming, known that exposing Marcus meant exposing herself to scrutiny again. But this time she had evidence. This time she had people who believed her. Okay, she said, I'm ready. Ready turned out to be a relative term. The Australian Federal Police arrived at Callaway Industries 3 days later with questions that lasted 6 hours. They went through everything. The original fraud from 3 years ago, the missing $2 million, Marcus's disappearance and reinvention, the connections to Andrew Kelly, the systematic sabotage of Ethan's company. Claire answered every question with a clarity she hadn't possessed 3 years ago. Back then, she'd been defensive and terrified and scrambling to prove her innocence. Now she just told the truth and let the evidence speak for itself. The lead investigator was a woman named Sarah Chen, who had the kind of sharp eyes that missed nothing. You understand this is going to get messy, she said during a break. Marcus Roth has resources, lawyers. He's going to fight extradition from Singapore. He's going to claim you fabricated evidence. He's going to drag this out as long as possible. I know, Claire said. And you're okay with that? With your name being in the news again? With people digging into your past? Claire thought about it, about the last 3 years spent hiding, about carrying wine bottles and pretending she was nobody, about the fear that had become so familiar she'd almost stopped noticing it. I'm tired of being afraid of him, she said finally. He took 3 years of my life. I'm not giving him any more. Sarah nodded slowly. Good. Because we're going to need you to testify, both for the fraud charges and the corporate espionage. It won't be easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. The investigator smiled slightly at that. No, I suppose it isn't. By the time Claire left the interview room, it was past 8 and she was exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. Ethan was waiting in the lobby, even though she'd told him he didn't need to stay. How'd it go? He asked. Long. Thorough. Probably going to get longer and more thorough. She sank into the chair next to him. They think they can build a solid case, but it's going to take time. Months, maybe. We have time. Do we? Your company's still being sued by Andrew Kelly. The board's still questioning your judgment. And now you're associated with a federal investigation into corporate fraud. The lawsuit will get dismissed once the criminal charges are filed. The board can question my judgment all they want. They're not getting rid of me. And I've been associated with worse things than a federal investigation. Ethan reached over and took her hand. Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. It's not going to work. You're stubborn. So are you. We're well matched that way. Claire wanted to argue, but she was too tired and he was too close and his hand was warm in hers. Take me home, she said quietly. I don't want to think about Marcus or investigations or any of it tonight. Your place or mine? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither of them had been ready to address before. Yours, Claire said. I want to see Oliver. I need to be around something good right now. They drove in comfortable silence through Sydney traffic. Ethan didn't press her to talk, didn't try to fill the quiet with empty reassurances. He just drove, one hand on the wheel and the other still holding hers. Oliver was already in pajamas when they arrived, being supervised by the nanny Ethan employed for late nights. "Claire!" he shouted, launching himself at her legs. "Dad said you had to work late. Are you staying for dinner? We have chicken nuggets shaped like dinosaurs." "Dinosaur nuggets sound perfect," Claire said, crouching down to his level. "Think you can teach me which dinosaurs are which?" "That's a stegosaurus," Oliver said seriously, holding up a nugget. "You can tell because of the spiky tail." "I thought that was a triceratops." "No, triceratops have horns, see?" He held up another nugget. "This one's a triceratops." They ate dinosaur nuggets at the kitchen table while Oliver narrated an elaborate story about how the dinosaurs were actually space explorers who traveled through time. Claire let the silliness wash over her, grateful for the distraction from everything else. After dinner, Ethan tried to convince Oliver it was bedtime. This went about as well as it always did. "But Claire just got here." "Claire will still be here tomorrow, and the next day. She's not going anywhere." "Promise?" Oliver looked at Claire with those enormous brown eyes. Claire's throat tightened. "I promise, buddy. I'm not going anywhere." "Okay, but you have to read me a story. In different languages." So she read him a picture book about a bear who couldn't find his way home, translating each page into a different language while Oliver giggled at the unfamiliar sounds. By the time she finished in Japanese, he was fighting to keep his eyes open. "One more," he mumbled, in the one that sounds like singing. "Portuguese?" "Yeah, that one." She read the last page in Portuguese, and Oliver was asleep before she finished the second sentence. Ethan carried him upstairs while Claire cleaned up the dinner dishes, trying to make herself useful and not think about how domestic this all felt. How easy. How much she wanted it to be real instead of just a moment stolen between disasters. "He adores you," Ethan said when he came back down. "Asks about you constantly. When's Claire coming? Can Claire teach me more languages? Does Claire like superheroes? I like him too. He's a good kid." "He is, but that's not what I'm asking." Ethan leaned against the counter, watching her. "I'm asking if this scares you as much as it scares me." Claire set down the dish towel and turned to face him. "What part? The part where I'm falling for my boss? Or the part where I'm falling for his kid too? Or the part where my psychotic ex-partner is actively trying to destroy both our lives and this whole thing could blow up spectacularly?" "All of it." "Yeah, it terrifies me." "Good. I'd be worried if it didn't." He moved closer, and Claire's heart started doing complicated things in her chest. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I'm not asking you to figure out what this is or where it's going. I just need you to know that when I look at you, I don't see an employee or a translator or someone I hired to fill a position." "What do you see?" "Someone extraordinary who's been convinced she's ordinary. Someone brave enough to start over when most people would have given up. Someone who makes my son laugh and challenges me when I'm being stupid and translates bedtime stories into Portuguese just because a 5-year-old asked her to." "Ethan, let me finish, please." He took her hands in his. "I see someone I could love. Someone I think I'm already starting to love. And I know the timing's terrible and the circumstances are complicated and we have every reason to wait until things are less messy. But I'm done waiting for perfect timing. Perfect timing doesn't exist. There's just now." Claire felt tears sliding down her face. "I'm a disaster. I have a federal investigation following me around. My mother's dying. My ex-partner wants to destroy everything I touch. You could do so much better than—" "I don't want better. I want you." The words broke something open in her chest, something that had been locked down tight for 3 years, protected behind layers of fear and self-preservation and the bone-deep belief that she didn't deserve good things anymore. "I want you too," she whispered. "So much. But I don't know how to do this. How to be someone who gets to have this." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out together." He cupped her face in his hands, wiping away tears with his thumbs. "If you want to. If this is something you actually want." "It is. It's terrifying and probably a terrible idea and definitely going to be complicated, but I want it anyway." "Then that's enough, for now. We'll deal with complicated when it shows up." He kissed her then, soft and careful and achingly sweet, like he was afraid she might break, or like he might. Claire kissed him back and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile, desperate kind she'd been clinging to since her world collapsed. The real kind. The kind that believed things could actually work out instead of just surviving until the next disaster. They spent the evening on his couch, tangled together, and talking about everything and nothing. Ethan told her about Sarah, about the grief that still hit him unexpectedly, about the guilt of moving forward. Claire told him about her father, about the languages she'd learned growing up, about the person she used to be before Marcus destroyed her. I miss that person sometimes, she admitted. The one who was confident and capable and believed she could handle anything. She's still in there, you're her, just with some hard-earned wisdom about trusting the wrong people. That's a nice way of saying I have trust issues. We all have trust issues. Mine just come with a side of dead wife trauma. He said it lightly, but Claire heard the pain underneath. Does it get easier? The grief? Not easier, just different. Some days I can think about her without feeling like I'm drowning. Other days Oliver will do something that reminds me of her, and it's like losing her all over again. He was quiet for a moment. But it's getting better, slowly. You help. How? You remind me that it's okay to move forward, that caring about someone new doesn't erase the person I lost, that I'm allowed to be happy again without feeling guilty about it. Claire rested her head on his shoulder. I'm terrified of losing this, of losing you, of something happening that takes it all away. Yeah, that's the price of caring about people. It might not work out. They might leave or die or turn out to be different than you thought. But the alternative is spending your whole life alone to avoid the risk, and that's not really living. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being careful. Careful didn't protect me from losing Sarah. Careful didn't make the grief easier. It just made me lonelier. He pulled her closer. I'd rather have this, even if it's temporary, than nothing at all. It won't be temporary, Claire said fiercely. I'm not going anywhere. I promised Oliver, and I'm promising you. Even with everything that's coming, the investigation, the trial, the media attention, especially with all that, I'm done running from hard things. They fell asleep on the couch sometime after midnight, wrapped around each other like they were afraid of letting go. Claire woke up a few hours later to find Oliver standing next to them with his stuffed penguin, looking pleased. You stayed over, he announced. I fell asleep, Claire said, trying to extract herself from Ethan without waking him. I should probably go eat. No, you should stay. We can have pancakes. Dad makes terrible pancakes, but he tries really hard. Ethan opened one eye. I heard that. My pancakes are fine. They're lumpy. Character building, Claire laughed despite herself. I should go home and change for work. I can't show up in yesterday's clothes. You could keep some clothes here, Ethan said casually, for emergencies, like surprise sleepovers. Oliver nodded enthusiastically. And you could have your own toothbrush in the blue bathroom. I'll show you. Before Claire could protest, Oliver grabbed her hand and dragged her upstairs to show her the blue bathroom, which apparently had the best shower and definitely needed a toothbrush for when she stayed over. By the time she made it back downstairs, Ethan was in the kitchen attempting pancakes that were indeed lumpy but tasted fine. Sorry about that, he said. Oliver's decided you're moving in, and I didn't want to crush his dreams before coffee. I'm not moving in. I know. But maybe you could keep a toothbrush here? For actual emergencies? Claire looked at him standing there in his rumpled t-shirt making terrible pancakes for his kid, and felt her carefully constructed boundaries crumbling. Blue bathroom? Blue bathroom. Oliver's specific request. Fine. I'll keep a toothbrush in the blue bathroom, for emergencies. And maybe some clothes. Don't push it, he grinned. Wouldn't dream of it. The next few weeks were a strange combination of normal and completely surreal. Claire went to work, handled translations, managed her team, and pretended her life wasn't a federal investigation waiting to explode. She had Saturday dinners at Ethan's that started including Fridays too. She kept a toothbrush in the blue bathroom and then some clothes because it was easier than going home to change. Marcus's extradition moved forward slowly. His lawyers fought every step, filing motion after motion to delay the process. Andrew Kelly's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice once the criminal charges were filed, and he disappeared before the authorities could question him further. Probably back in Singapore, David reported during one of their strategy meetings. We've got people looking for him, but he's good at vanishing. Like Marcus, Claire said. Like Marcus. They probably learned from each other. The original fraud case was reopened with new evidence. 3 of Claire's former employees came forward with testimony about Marcus's behavior before he disappeared. The federal investigators found paper trails linking him to the stolen money. Slowly, painfully, Claire's name started being cleared. It wasn't dramatic. There was no single moment where everyone suddenly believed her. Just a gradual shift as the evidence mounted and people realized she'd been telling the truth all along. Some of her old colleagues reached out with apologies that felt hollow after 3 years of silence. Claire accepted them gracefully and didn't bother trying to rebuild those relationships. They'd abandoned her when it mattered. Their guilt now didn't change that. Her mother's health declined as winter approached. The doctors said weeks, maybe a month. Claire spent every evening at the hospital that she wasn't at Ethan's, sitting with Isabel and talking about everything and nothing. "You're happy," her mother said one evening. "I can see it in your face. You're finally happy again." "I'm terrified," Claire corrected. "But yeah, also happy." "Good. Your father would have liked Ethan, would have approved of a man who values honesty and takes care of his people. I wish Dad could have met him." "Me too, sweetheart. But I'm glad I got to see you find someone who deserves you. That's enough." Isabel died on a Tuesday morning with Claire holding her hand. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing like the dramatic hospital scenes in movies. One moment she was breathing, and the next she just wasn't. Claire sat there for a long time, holding her mother's cooling hand and feeling the weight of being an orphan settle over her shoulders. No parents left. No safety net. Just her and whatever life she'd managed to build from the wreckage. Ethan found her in the hospital chapel an hour later, staring at a generic stained glass window and trying to figure out how to feel. "David told me," he said quietly, sitting down next to her. "I'm so sorry." "She was ready. She told me she was ready." Claire's voice was flat, emotionless. "I thought I was ready too, but it turns out you're never actually ready to be alone. You're not alone. Everyone says that, but she was the last person who knew me before everything fell apart. The last person who remembered who I used to be. Now that person's gone, and I'm just whoever this is." Ethan took her hand. "This person is brave and brilliant and stronger than she knows. Your mother saw that. I see it. Oliver sees it. You're the only one who doesn't. I'm tired, Ethan. I'm tired of being strong, tired of fighting, tired of proving I deserve to exist. Then stop. Stop fighting alone. Let people help you. Let me help you." Claire turned to look at him. "Why? Why do you care so much about a broken translator with more baggage than a cargo plane?" "Because you're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." He pulled her into his arms, and Claire finally let herself cry. For her mother. For her father. For the 3 years she'd lost to Marcus's cruelty. For the person she used to be and the person she was trying to become. She cried until she had nothing left, and Ethan just held her through all of it without trying to fix anything or make it better. Sometimes that was enough, just being held while the world fell apart. The funeral was small. A few colleagues from Callaway Industries, Patricia and James from her team, David Chen looking uncomfortable in a suit that was somehow more formal than his usual formal suits, and Ethan with Oliver, who'd insisted on coming because Claire was sad and needed superhero penguins. "Penguins fix everything," Oliver explained seriously to anyone who'd listen. "They're magic." Claire didn't have the heart to tell him that penguins, magical or otherwise, couldn't bring people back from the dead. But she appreciated the sentiment. They scattered Isabel's ashes in the harbor at sunset, and Claire said goodbye to the last connection to her childhood, to the life before everything changed, to the safety of having someone who loved her unconditionally. "She was proud of you," Ethan said afterward. "She told me the last time I visited, said you'd finally found your way back to yourself." "When did you visit her?" "A few times. When you were at work. I wanted to tell her my intentions were honorable, that I wasn't taking advantage of you during a vulnerable time, that I actually cared about you." "What did she say?" "She said if I hurt you, she'd haunt me forever. Then she made me promise to take care of you when she was gone." He smiled slightly. "I told her you didn't need taking care of. She said everyone needs taking care of sometimes, even people who are good at pretending they don't." Claire felt tears burning again. She would have loved seeing you try to keep that promise. "Then I'll keep it. For her, for you, for Oliver who's decided you're part of the family now and won't hear otherwise. I'm part of the family? If you want to be, no pressure. But the position of Oliver's favorite person and my partner in handling life's disasters is currently open. You're well qualified. Despite everything, Claire laughed. That's the worst job description I've ever heard. But is it inaccurate? No, sadly, it's perfect. Marcus's extradition was approved in December. He was brought back to Australia in handcuffs, still arrogant, still convinced he'd find a way out. Claire watched him being led through the airport on the news and felt nothing but a distant satisfaction that he was finally being held accountable. The trial was scheduled for March. 3 months of preparation, of strategy meetings with prosecutors, of reliving every detail of the fraud. Claire dreaded it and needed it in equal measure. You don't have to testify if you don't want to, David reminded her. We have enough evidence without your testimony. The paper trail, the witnesses, the recent sabotage, it's solid. I want to, Claire said firmly. I want to look him in the eye and tell the truth about what he did. I want him to know he didn't destroy me. He's going to try. His lawyers are going to rake you over the coals. They're going to bring up every mistake you ever made. They're going to try to make you look incompetent or complicit, or both. Let them try. I'm not the scared waitress hiding from the world anymore. I'm the person who caught him lying twice. Once 3 years ago, and once 3 months ago. I can handle his lawyers. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Marcus looked smaller than Claire remembered, older and more worn. He didn't look at her during most of the proceedings, keeping his eyes on his lawyers or the judge or anywhere else. When Claire took the stand, she told the truth. All of it. The friendship that had become a business partnership. The trust that had been exploited. The morning she'd discovered the fraud. The 3 years of rebuilding while he'd been living comfortably in Singapore under a new name. Marcus's lawyer tried to rattle her. Isn't it true, Ms. Bennett, that you had equal access to the company accounts? Yes. And isn't it true that you signed off on many of the transactions in question? I signed off on legitimate business expenses. The fraudulent transactions were done using forged authorization. How convenient that you claim forgery when you're the one being accused. It's not a claim. It's documented fact. The forensic accountant found discrepancies in the signature analysis. That evidence is already part of the record. The lawyer switched tactics. You've had financial difficulties since your company dissolved, haven't you? Yes, because I lost my business and my reputation. Couldn't those financial difficulties have been motivation to embezzle from your own company? Claire looked directly at Marcus for the first time. He was watching her now, that familiar smirk on his face like he'd already won. If I'd wanted to embezzle $2 million, I wouldn't have been stupid enough to leave a trail pointing directly at me. I would have been smart about it, created shell companies, used offshore accounts, covered my tracks. She turned back to the lawyer. Like your client did. But I didn't do any of that because I didn't steal the money. He did. The prosecution presented evidence connecting Marcus to Andrew Kelly, to the Callaway Industries sabotage, to a pattern of fraud spanning multiple countries. Former employees testified about his manipulation. The forensic accountants showed how the money had moved. By the time the defense rested, it was clear Marcus was finished. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Claire sat in the courtroom and watched Marcus's face as the verdict was read. The arrogance finally cracked, replaced by something that looked like shock. Like he couldn't believe his brilliance hadn't been enough to save him. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Claire gave a brief statement thanking the prosecutors and the investigators and everyone who'd believed her when it mattered. Then she walked away from the cameras and the questions and the whole circus. Ethan was waiting by his car with Oliver. Claire! Oliver ran over and hugged her legs. Dad said you won, that the bad man can't hurt you anymore. That's right, buddy. He can't hurt anyone anymore. Good. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? I think that's a perfect idea, Ethan said, ruffling his son's hair. Then to Claire, quietly, how are you really? Tired, relieved, still processing. She looked at him. But okay. I think I'm actually okay. Good. Because Oliver and I have something we want to ask you. What? Oliver pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to her ceremoniously. We made this. Claire unfolded it. A crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one medium, one small. Above them, in Oliver's careful printing and Ethan's neater hand, our family. See? That's me. Oliver pointed to the small figure. And that's Dad. And that's you. Because you're part of our family now, right? Claire's eyes were burning. Right. If that's okay? It's very okay, Ethan said. More than okay. We love you, Claire. Both of us. And we'd like you to move in with us. Officially. Not just a toothbrush in the blue bathroom. I still have a lease on my apartment. We'll pay the early termination fee. I might drive you both crazy. We're already crazy. You'll fit right in. Oliver was bouncing on his toes. Say yes, say yes. I already cleared out the closet in the blue bedroom for your clothes. Claire looked at them. This man who'd believed in her when she couldn't believe in herself. This kid who'd adopted her into his life with the easy acceptance only children possessed. This family that shouldn't have been hers, but somehow was. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll move in. Yes, I love you both too. Yes to all of it. Oliver cheered. Ethan kissed her right there on the courthouse steps in front of everyone. And Claire finally understood what her father had meant about words building bridges. Sometimes you had to lose everything to find what actually mattered. Sometimes the bridges you built led you home in ways you never expected. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you was actually the thing that saved you because it forced you to become someone stronger than the person you'd been before. 6 months later, Claire stood in the translation services department looking at a project list that was actually manageable. Patricia had been promoted to deputy director. James was leading the Mandarin division. They'd hired 3 new translators, all carefully vetted and properly trained. Callaway Industries was thriving. The board had finally stopped questioning Ethan's leadership. The company had landed 2 major contracts that would keep them busy for years. And Claire lived in a brownstone with a man she loved and a 5-year-old who insisted she teach him a new language every month. Currently, they were working on Italian. Oliver was very excited about the hand gestures. You look happy, Patricia said, appearing in Claire's office doorway. Disgustingly happy. It's kind of nauseating. I am happy. Is that allowed? I suppose. Just don't go getting complacent. Happy people make stupid mistakes. I'll try to remain appropriately paranoid. Good. Patricia hesitated. I'm proud of you. For the record. You came in here terrified and convinced you'd fail, and instead you rebuilt an entire department and took down a criminal mastermind. That's pretty badass. I had help. You did. But you're the one who showed up and did the work. Give yourself some credit. After Patricia left, Claire sat at her desk looking out at the Sydney skyline. 3 years ago, she'd been serving wine and trying to survive. Now she was here, leading a team, living with people she loved, building something that mattered. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever was. She still had nightmares sometimes about Marcus, still struggled with trusting her own judgment, still mourned her parents and the years she'd lost. But she'd learned something important through all of it. Broken things could be repaired, lost things could be found. And sometimes the bridges you built led you exactly where you needed to be, even if the journey was nothing like you'd planned. Her father had been right. Words built bridges between people, but it was courage that made you willing to cross them. Courage to risk connection after betrayal. Courage to love again after loss. Courage to believe you deserved good things, even when the world had spent years convincing you otherwise. Claire packed up her desk and headed home. To Ethan, who'd be attempting dinner with varying success. To Oliver, who'd want to show her the new superhero moves he'd learned. To a life she'd never imagined having, but somehow couldn't imagine living without. The contract that had brought her back into the world had been with Ethan. But the thing she'd translated back into existence hadn't been a business deal. It had been herself. And that, Claire thought, as she rode the elevator down from the 63rd floor, was worth all the broken pieces it had taken to get here.